Okay, I start recording.
Okay.
All right. So let's start tracking the work items. I put up this spreadsheet as again, it's for just tracking our progress by ourselves and not really requires asking people to put a lot of work in this. So Gally prototyping was done. Also has an awesome demo last week. If you guys missed it, please go to the recording link that I put down over here. I'm not sure how persistent Zoom recording document stays, but
I think it just saves to your hard drive, right?
no, it's in the cloud.
Oh.
I don't know how long it's gonna live.
Oh.
I will figure that out. So he had a demo. Goes to if you go to the recording, you will see the demo. So Gally Alpha is in progress.
Yeah. So just heads down writing code and trying to figure things out. That was interesting.
Okay, sorry about the noise. We have some automations in the room.
Some magic thing just started to move. So you still had issues with the synchronization. So I am still trying to figure out the right algorithm, right cheap algorithm to make sure that the synchronization is working correctly. I kind of stopped spending time on it now. I'm just trying to write tests, clean up whatever code I have, and try to get it in, and then try to solve that problem later on, because I suspect it's just going to be building up on the current code anyways.
This is a big portion of work, and there's a sub work item to be tracked by the GitHub link in reference in the doc. So if you guys want to help with some of the work items, welcome. Okay, now go to the second prototyping, the OS config, and the OS config has been checked in, and the CRD revision prototyping is done. That's I'm going to present today. So DM has just had a design meeting yesterday in the security working group, and so the cluster and namespace scope, at least for the format, has been settled. We're gonna follow the Kubernetes similar thing like cluster role and the role, but a few details, and I will roll that into the API style guide. So no other work in this area has been pretty much started. So API style, the style guide is in, and Hong checked in his PR, but that's just the first load of the style guide. We're adding those fine-tuning and things over the next months. We expect this to be stable by the end of this quarter. In terms of style, the actual work to follow this new style, I'm still working on the pilot code to allow the pilot to be able to access different CRDs from the different API version. So currently, pilot only has one client, and because we expect all the CRDs in the same API group and the version, and that's not going to work in the long term, as also collide with what we want to do with in Gally. We want to have two different API groups, internal and external. So this work will help to move that forward. But the hard part about this is the pilot, it kind of expect that there's only one client everywhere in the code base. So in order to have multiple clients, there's some kind of a deeper refactor need to be done. And there's nothing else has been moved along very well. And Jason is out for this week. So you can go to the issue to track the validation progress.
Well, it's worth mentioning the discussion we had with the Kubernetes folks on the versioning concerns, like V1 versus V1 alpha, beta. And
oh yes, I need to add that to work items. About we had a good discussion with the Istio environment group about how the CRD versioning and the CRD upgrade story when the ES2 cluster being updated. So we also had a good meeting with the API and Kubernetes API team to review our proposals. So I will add that into this spreadsheet and also add that link to the GitHub issues to track that work.
And so we ended up at the end of the discussion. So the issue is right now we have a lot of our config is stored as v1 alpha or v1 beta and named that way. And for a first-class Kubernetes resource, there's a mechanism to automatically kind of alias these names so that if you come out with your 1.0 version, you can create a 1.0 entry point, and it'll access the same underlying resource, even called beta or v1. And that facility does not exist for CRDs. So we need to figure out what to do about this for our 1.0. How are we gonna deal with this? The functionality is going to be added for CRDs, but not in time for us, it appears. So the choices were either we come out with 1.0 and our APIs are still called alpha and beta, and we just put a star somewhere in the documentation saying, sorry, it's really 1.0, even though it all says beta, we'll fix it later when we can. And the alternative is we actually rename everything and break existing configs that are out there. So
yeah, this is the meeting notes. It's also linked to the issue. We tracked. So we had initial meetings, and there's some action items. Basically, we're still gonna testing our plan B. It's basically we're gonna assume this. We have to freeze the CRD and the configs doing upgrade, and how we kind of accepting two versions, and then deprecate one version will work with the scripts and the migration. Martin just talked.
Yeah, so this ends up being a big bang thing. New version of Istio only understands the V1 and not the beta, and we need to provide some sort of an upgrade script to do this. So we'll see if that works. Ideally, this is a one-time problem. By sometime this summer, Kubernetes will support the features that we need, and it should just work then.
So any questions about config work and any pieces I've missed?
I had a piece that I forgot to throw in here. Kubernetes has the concept of component configs, whereby you can, instead of passing, like we do now, a bunch of templates that resemble command flags to the process, you can adapt the component to accept an actual component config, which is a Kubernetes type. Do you think that that would be of any benefit to us in creating component configs for things like pilot and or mixer? Or are we happy with what we are kind of working with now?
So you mean as opposed to using command line flags? Is that?
Yeah, I know we want to try to get away from the command line flags in favor of like the templated config that we have now, which is basically just a Go template. This would be more Kubernetes specific, but also more Kubernetes native, I guess.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, you end up, we do end up needing these kind of lower level, change the behavior of the component as opposed to more semantic configuration. So I wasn't aware Kubernetes had anything in that space. But it'd be worth exploring that, I think.
Yeah, would you add a link to the meeting notes, and so I can look further on that front?
Yeah, I'll have to add one later. But yeah, you said Jason's out this week. He probably has opinions on this as well.
Yes, our intent there was always to, we want to remove all the command line options, make those, if possible, be dynamically configurable things. Not everything can be dynamically configured. Sometimes it's just a startup thing. But, and right now we're not like Mixer has 20 options or something, that really most of those should be dynamic. That's interesting.
Okay. So anything else? Okay, so if nothing else, I will quickly move into the next work agenda. I will do a quick demo with the CRD with the revisions. And some disclaimer, this is a kind of a very early work preliminary explorations on how we can using controller revisions and to save some of the revisions for the CRDs we enter to Kubernetes API server. This work I've been getting a lot of help from Janet. And if you have any question, I think the main purpose is I kind of showing through the demo the concept, and then we can talk a bit about how that's meant to our config model for Istio and how we're going to use it in Istio config. So so basically the demo is showing. Now I'm moving to the demo mode. So basically all the demo I'm going to show is on the Minikube I set up on my own computer. So if you're looking at, I always a cube. So it's a kind of an empty Minikube cluster, and there's some resource is there. I'm going to remove this. So I'm going to make sure it's clean. I remove all the CRDs. There's only one. I remove the one I have right now. So in the demo, basically what I have is I'm gonna run a controller. In the demo, I built the controllers through the sample controller because I want to do in parallel with Galley prototyping. But in future, everything about this will move upon into Galley when it's a bit more stable. So you can think of the controller has no difference as Galley in future. So now first I show there's no CRD there and there's an empty cluster. I showed you already. So now what I do is I'm gonna run my controller. It's gonna a little bit to compile, and after that it will run. Once it's run, it sends a lot of error message. That's because they cannot find the CRD. So in this demo, there's only one CRD. It's called example 4. So to get a peek of what it looks like, it's a very simple example. Basically, it's a spec has 2 string fields. You don't need to care what these are. These are nothing to do with this replica has nothing to do with the revisions. So basically says it's just random things. Okay, now my controller is up because it's a strongly typed clients, so they cannot find the fault that's expected. Now I goes into to run to load that CRD. Okay. So I run this, then the full CRD has been created. Just giving a peek of this one defines what the CRD is. So after that, the controller starts workers and stop complaining. But until now, there's no CRD objects. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create that example for. I just showed you guys, and I'm gonna create that one. Then the controller gonna do some work. They watch that CRD, and behind the scene, it will create a revision for that CRD objects. So if you go to kubectl and you do get full example full, you will see that one, and if you go to the actual contents, you will see some revision has been created. So this was used called the controller history. It's called a controller revision CRD. That's a Kubernetes v1 API. If you go to called the controller revision. I mistyped. So you see this is new. This controller revision is not visible when you type get all. It's not registered for that command. But if you just go to looking for the particular kind, you will see this revision has been created. And also you can do is, and that's you see the object's name matches the name.
I'm confused. So what is controller revision v1 apps? Where does that name come from? Is that something you created, or is that standard thing?
So controller revision v1 apps is a built-in Kubernetes resource.
Okay.
So upon a creation of example full, the controller, which I run here, will create a controller revision objects that stores a revision of that example full.
Okay.
So if you go take a look at what's in there, you can looking at basically, so this is all custom defined. So basically I defined the patch of example full basically stores everything in spec. And there's some of the building metadata about that thing, the control revision. Now what I do is
Sorry, so there are things like full hash, for example. That's not something that you did, right? It is part of the. Do you calculate that, or is it?
This one, the full hash. This is I put it in that label.
Okay.
Yes, you can put it. So this is you can put in, but the sum of the fields is building read-only fields.
Okay.
Okay, so now what I'm gonna show is so kubectl, so controller revision is currently used by a few of the Kubernetes resources like a stateful set and the daemon sets. So for those resources, you can have a comment like you can looking for the history for those CRDs. But the problem is this one, it doesn't work because it's all done in the client. So you need to modify the client to be able to recognize example full and the full type and also show the history. So in order to this, I did a hack on the client. This is my special kubectl. So if you run like a history, now you can see there's a revision. But there's some issues with hacking the client, the kubectl client. So that's why you see the revision 0, that's bogus. But I will talk about by the end of the demo why it's showing up.
So is that going to become more general purpose in kubectl?
No. Now kubectl, every types, if you want to implement the control revision, you have to put in some special code. There's no generalization mechanism at this moment. Let me quickly show how to update that version. So let me do a thing is now I need to change that example full. So I will just quickly show like the update. The update is basically change the deployment name into a different name and the replica. And that's different from example full and the replica one. So what I'm gonna do is kubectl apply and that file. So I did this. And so if you're looking for the get full example full, you will see it has been updated to joyful and a different replica. And you will see the revision has been moved along. So if you go to my previous command to get the control revisions, now you see there's still controller revisions because every time you update this, you will get a new control revision. One thing to note is API server is level triggered. So if I do this again, they won't advance the revision because there's nothing actually in the spec has been different. So I can, if I just keep applying the same updates, that doesn't really change. They won't do anything to the revision.
Well, do old revisions get deleted after a while, or does that have to be done manually?
So we handle all the history management in our own code to handle this. So now I said in the code I said there's 5 revisions, history revisions, but we can change. But we actually set the number, and we also taking care of my logic, taking care of removing all the revisions. So the framework doesn't take care. The framework only provide a control revision CID and some manipulations around that CID, but then nothing beyond that.
This is still your custom control, right? That's running in the background. That's actually creating this revision.
Exactly. That's you see all the work being done in here.
So, what is the platform is providing you? So, like, if I were to do this naively, I would still have that controller. I have a different CRD. I would say, okay, this is going to be revisions, and then as the thing changes, I just keep inserting entries into that, right? So, this is the naive approach. So, what is the framework providing you in this flow that makes it easier? So,
I think it just provides a definition of that control revision CRD.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
So we don't get anything like, for example, oh, I want to do a replacement, kind of like a higher level operations along with it. It's just a storage area that's not really visible as a regular CRD. It's a well-known type of thing. Is that the additional value?
And I think one of the intent is I think control revision is designed to be fairly generic.
Mm-hmm.
It hopefully to capture like almost all the use cases and to store for revisions as a Kubernetes resource. So it's I think one way if we kind of using control revision along with them. I'm not sure, Janet, is there's any plan. So let me finish this demo.
Sure.
And then we go through these long-term questions. It's kind of if they want to extend some of the use to. So anyway, so if you go to the rollout history, now you see there's 2 revisions. So now you can do something like you can do undo. So undo is a rollback, and there's you can provide parameter like the 2 revisions, something like those. Say you can do 2 revision 1. This one doesn't actually work, and the reason is I will tell you guys. On the demo, it's only a dry run. The reason is the kubectl is a typed clients, and the example file is not registered with their standard resource. So it will be a lot more work to get example file to be in this type, so they can find that particular example file object and the link to all the revisions. So I didn't do that. That's why it's just like a demo shows you can undo to those revisions when we go back. So it's gonna expect to work in the same mechanism as if you are familiar with the Kubernetes deployment and the deployment replica set. You can kind of run this rollout undo to certain replica set to roll back to certain deployment. So that's you can also do with control revision. That's just what I'm showing.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, then to do to display the set of available revisions, we need special dedicated code. To undo, we need dedicated code. Okay, so we'll end up putting this stuff in istio-ctl then, I suppose.
Exactly. So I see it's not very easy if we want to put this into kubectl, but there's much easier if we do this in istio-ctl. So something I just noticed is for CID to be able to do the revisions. So all the istio CIDs need to add a special status message. Hopefully I show here. Something like this thing is not coming by itself. Basically, all the CIDs we need to having these fields putting our status message. They didn't do it for us, so we need to add this on. But those status message expect to be building fields that you cannot change it by the users. This is something new we need to add. And also, I just discussed kubectl is type the clients. So if we want to do ourselves, we need to figure out how to code the gen CID types, and it might be just easier to do in EstuCtl. So furthermore, I don't know what's the plan in Kubernetes. Maybe Janet can give me some answers. What's the plan for controller revisions? Do we have any plan to generalize them? Yes, go ahead.
So controller revision is it's already GA, so we don't plan to do much change to it. And the reason that we created controller revision is that we want daemon set and stateful set and maybe other controllers can just use this to store their data. And we make it generic because most Kubernetes built-in controllers have the pod template. But stateful set is a bit different because stateful set also needs something called volume templates and persistent volume template, and that's why we make it generic. But I think because controller revision is just something that it's we use to store history without creating different kinds for each controller. So that's why we have it. And if you feel that controller revision doesn't suit you so well, or you want more customization, then you can just create a CRD with similar thing, because it's just a type for storing some data there.
Just what you said.
We don't have to use control revision.
Yeah, so I was just trying to understand the level of or the type of things that we get from the infrastructure. So, all right.
Okay, so officially the meeting should end, but any questions on the front of demos? So I will share all the comments I use and also the links to the repos I use to do the demo. So if you want to quick play around it, I will attach to the meeting notes after the meeting. Any other questions? Okay, so we don't really have much time to see the architecture for this meeting, so we move to next week. Because that sounds okay for you?
Yeah, that's fine. So in the meantime, if you guys want, in the team drive in the config folder is a config architecture document. I've only got a few, like 7 or 8 pages in there. I'm busy adding stuff, so by next week it'll be more full. So maybe next week I can actually have a few slides or something.
Okay, so we're gonna plan to review next week.
Yeah, I think next week.
This is the doc Matan talked about that. Okay, so no more questions. Thank you very much. I'm gonna see you guys next week.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Stop the video.